Hello and welcome to our tutorial. So in this tutorial we're going to just have a look at and explore using raycasting instead of instantiating. So in our last version of this character we had a bullet that we were firing from our fire point, and we added this line of code in here. We said if we press the F key for fire, instantiate the bullet at the fire point and at the rotation of the fire point. And then on the bullet we had a script, I think, where we added on the actual bullet itself, we gave the bullet a velocity. Excuse me. So in this one what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at using raycasting. So I've just commented out the instantiate and I've commented out the bullet. And what we're saying instead now is we're saying if I press the F key, start a coroutine called shot. Now if you remember, we used coroutine before, we used it here. So we said start coroutine cutscene, and then cutscene says wait for 8 seconds and then change level. So so we can't run this function in update, because every frame it would try and wait for 8 seconds, so it would never reach its destination. It would be starting the count every frame. So we have to run this kind of coroutine outside of update. So hence it doesn't just say if I press F run void shot, because void shot can't wait for 8 seconds either. So we have to run a coroutine. So let's have a look at our coroutine. So this is it here, I enumerator shot, and then this is the raycast. So we're saying it's very similar to the instantiate. So it's very similar to this. Instantiate is add object, what object? This object at this position at this rotation. And the raycast hit is saying make a raycast, and we're calling it hit. That we could call it anything we wanted. So we'll call it hit. And what is it? It's a physics 2D raycast that starts at this point and goes in this direction. So I've got minus, that's just how it works for me because of the orientation of the empty that we have. But, so minus right is left, etc. So then we say after we've added in the raycast, which is basically just drawing a line that's infinitely long. And if it collides with something, then we can retrieve data. So we say then, if we hit something, so if hit, we'll ignore this bit for a minute. We'll ignore this additional if. That's sort of our next class, but we'll kind of reflect on it now. So we're saying if we hit something, then draw a line. Now the line that we're drawing, when we're actually in Unity, Unity won't draw the raycast for us. We can ask it to show us the raycast in the editor, and it will. You can put, I think it's debug.raydraw or something, or draw ray. So we can actually see it in a debug, but if we want to see it in the actual game, this line that it's drawing, it's actually quite problematic. It's not set up to do that. So in order to see what we're doing, to see a line, to see like a laser, what I've done here is I've added a what's called a line renderer. So let's just have a look at what a line renderer is. So I've got one here, but I can just right click and go effects, line. There's my line there. Now if you add one, you can't see it, and that's because by default it's actually drawn on the Z axis. So I'd have to, you can see it's, if I turn these sideways, it's actually being drawn on Z. So from 0 to 1 on Z. So if I stop that there and I say maybe put in 3 or 4 here, so that's the line there. And I can change its color. I can give it some sort of gradient, so I can how do I do that? There we go. So I can change the color. So start it with red and then end it with, I don't know, some horrible green. And so this is the alpha. So so you can do all sorts of nice things with it there if you wanted, in terms of its aesthetic. So that's a line cast, and we can set its thickness with this. We would have to set its order and layer so that it's on top of everything, so it would shoot on top of things. Normally you would tell it to use world space so that it would not change its position unless we told it to using these coordinates. And then how we're going to use this is we're going to turn it on and off with this here. So we're going to turn that component, the line renderer component, on and off. So let's delete that. So here's one I made earlier. So again, the component is turned on and off. It's got a very simple kind of gradient from red to white. I've set the width to be in the middle. It's got a length of 2. I've turned on world space. I've turned off this component here by default. So we have to turn it on when we fire. And then I've made it a child of the player, and that's important. So we can actually get the scripts to talk to one another. So let's have a look again here at the script. So we've declared it as a line renderer as a variable. So when I click on the player here, that's it there, line renderer. So I've had to drag this and drop it in there. You can see I've got one up here in my prefabs, but I'm actually not using that. That was for something else. So this is the one I'm using, and you can see it there. So if we go back to the script now, so I've declared it as a public line renderer, and I could call that Biffy if I wanted. That's just the name of it. So down here, I'm saying, let's say it was called Biffy. I go Biffy.setPosition, and then I have to give it a starting point, an X and Y coordinate. So it's going to start at 0 on X and fire point.position. So that's our empty. And then we're going to go line render set position 1.hit point. So the hit is basically where the raycast intersects with where the collision has happened between it and an object, and it could be any object. So we're saying, so if I hit something, draw between the fire point and the point that I hit, between those 2 points. And then we're saying else, if I don't hit anything, because quite often you'll shoot and you won't hit anything, we're saying draw the line between the fire point and this other position, which is fire point dot position plus the right position multiplied by 10. And again, it's minus fire point because that's the direction we want to go in. I could multiply that by any number I wanted. So let's just see that in action here. So I can press play, and I'll walk a little bit. I'm going to press F. So now that's it with length 10. And now we can see that it'll draw a much shorter line, but the line will draw longer and shorter because it'll draw between me and where I hit, or it'll draw 10 units long. So if I wanted to go completely off the screen, I'd need to make this a bit longer. So let's say, I don't know, 25. And we'll save that. And then we'll go back in here and we'll zoom out a little bit. And then I'm just going to make sure I have nothing selected. And now when I press F, you can see up here in the editor that the line is like going way off the edge of the screen. But if I turn this way, it only goes as far as the player that I'm contacting. Now, how long does that line last for? Well, we also get to say that in the script. So down here, so it's going to draw it to these positions, and then we're saying line renderer is true. So if hit, so if there is a raycast, and there is a raycast because we've told it to raycast. So if there's a raycast, make it true. So the line renderer, make it true. Then wait for 0.1 of a second and then turn it off. So let's just make this a bit longer. So I'll say 1.1 just to illustrate that we have control over that. So we'll press play. Now I could always make those things variables that I can access here in the so you can see it's lasting a little bit longer. And in this instance here, you can see it makes no sense because he could end up walking through the laser that's just hit him. So you don't want it to be displayed on screen for too long. So having it at 0.1 as a laser in a kind of sci-fi sort of scenario makes it it makes more sense. So that's basically how you do it. So you're basically, the only reason we're in the iEnumerator is so we can wait, we can set the time. The rest will work actually in Update. So just in summary, we're saying draw a line. So and we do that by going physics2d.raycast from this point, and then fire it off to minus the right, so send it left, and then call that line. It's going to be a raycast hit and call it hit. And then if hit, so if I'm actually firing it, then draw the point to the collision, and if there's no collision, draw the point longer, so 25 units longer, and then make it flash on and off the line renderer, make the line renderer flash on and off for 0.1 of a second. So the only other thing I've got in here is this, and we're going to do this in our next class in Unity, which is basically we're going to make a UI. So what we can do here, we can say if hit.collider.tag equals enemy. So if I've collided, if this raycast has collided with an object that's tagged enemy, then hit.collider.gameObject.send message, send the message to the collider that I've hit, and the message I'm sending is take damage. And then over here I've kind of prepped for that. I haven't filled it in yet, but I'm saying void take damage. Now I could add additional information here, put in comma like 10, so send 10 points of damage, or I can send messages different ways. But basically this is going to, if I hit something called enemy, it's going to send this message, and then we can run that message as a function. And if we look in here, my non-player character is tagged enemy, so I just hit add tag and I added in the tag enemy. So when we're working on this in our next session, what we'll do is we will create a very simple UI, and on that UI we'll have the non-player character's health, and we'll look at different ways of displaying that. We could put a health bar above the non-player character, or we could put it up in the corner, and that's again a design sort of question for you guys to answer. But we'll look at both ways of doing that, but both are the same in terms of their mechanics. And so then when we hit it with our laser, that health will count down until it deletes the character, or we have a death animation or an explosion or something that indicates the character has reached 0 health. So that's what we'll explore in our next video. So that is raycasting. So not too difficult. And hopefully of use to you in your games.